Welcome to the Miss Poppins, the Art of Parenting podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Shapiro, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's webinar. We'll be diving into the crucial topic of how to easily transition from work to maternity leave. Before we get started, people can like and subscribe to Miss Poppins so you don't miss any of our upcoming live webinars and expert conversations. So, without further ado, we are joined by a phenomenal guest today, Arianna Hillis, the founder and CEO of Shoshanna's Daughter. Arianna has over 20 years of leadership experience and has dedicated her career to helping parents navigate the complex transition of parental leave. She and her team provide evidence-based coaching programs that support parents in preparing for leave, navigating time away, returning to work with confidence. Arianna, we're so happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and have this conversation.
So, can you explain why is parental leave such a crucial transition to working parents?
Yeah, as a working parent, depending on how many kids you're planning on having, it doesn't get any easier actually, which is, I have 3 kids and that was, I think, maybe the mistake that I made. I thought, oh, the first one, maybe some bumps in the transition, but as you add more people to your family, it actually doesn't get easier. It gets harder. And so, the transition from being a working parent already or being a worker to then having and growing your family, it's one of the most complex transitions that you're going to navigate in your life and your career at the same time. And so oftentimes, if you think back to how things used to be over thousands of years, there was a lot of support for new parents with community. All of that's kind of been stripped away for a multitude of reasons. But as people want to progress in their career, as they want to have it all, have their family, have their relationship with their significant other, if they have one, kind of stay together, there's a lot to navigate there. And so it's very complex, and oftentimes finding support for yourself. Mothers in particular, unfortunately, are really good at not advocating for themselves and not kind of raising their hand and saying, hey, I need some support here. But that's actually when you need it the most. And I think we need to remove the stigma that comes with saying, I need help. This is a really important time in my life.
Yes, it is so humbling because we think we can do it all, right? We can be superwoman. We're told that you can be this like career woman and have kids and a perfect clean house and the perfect hair and all these things, but it's not necessarily always, realistic. We're not superhuman. I remember when I went back to work, one of the other moms pulled me aside and said, "You can have it all, but it's really hard to have it all at the same time with kids. Things come in waves, right? You might be able to have it all in the sense of your kids are, sleeping through the night, but then maybe they're not necessarily eating. So it's really, there's always something that is a work in progress. So thank you so much for explaining that.
Yeah.
Um, the next question that, would love to learn is what's the biggest challenge that parents face when preparing for maternity leave, do you feel?
Yeah. So what I hear most commonly is there's the external stressors and internal. So breaking
Hmm.
down the external, usually if someone's a working parent and they're preparing for leave, unfortunately, organizations are not great at having a standardized process in place for setting up the expecting parent, the manager, and the teams up for success when someone's going to take leave. And it shouldn't be a surprise when people say, I'm having a child. Like, people aren't going to stop having kids and stop working. So that's why I'm really passionate about the work that I do with organizations to help make sure that they have a standardized process. There's templates in place that managers are trained on when they get the news, first, how to properly respond and not say something illegal or, horrible, which happens all the time. I have so many unfortunate stories. But that it's seamless, that it's like, okay, we've got this as a team. We know what to do. We're prepared. And so one of those external stressors is not having a plan. And oftentimes managers, they're so busy managing, they're like, I'm not equipped to like come up with your transition plan. I don't know, you do it. And so that happened to me as, 3 times over where my manager was like, I don't know, you know your work, you know what needs to be delegated. Like these are the people on the team, like create an SOP, a standard operating procedure on what needs to be done on these accounts while you're out. And so I spent weeks putting a plan together, which took me away from, I was working on it at night and weekends because I deeply cared and I didn't want my team to feel resentful. I didn't want my manager to feel like I didn't care and that I wasn't taking this seriously. So there's a lot of pressure on me to create this plan. And that is the biggest stressor that I hear is people feel like I don't want to leave my team hanging and I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to put a formal plan together. So that's where like some coaching and additional support can be really helpful for the expecting parent with or without the support of their manager and organization. Some other external stressors can be maybe your in-laws or your own parents or family or friends are like giving you all they're dumping their knowledge on you, and some of it just might feel a little overwhelming and like it doesn't fit for you. And if you're a type A person and you like to be organized, things can feel really chaotic during this time. And then on the internal side, I would say self-doubt, perfectionism. This is going to sound strange, but bear with me. Grief. I'm losing what I had. I'm losing the independence. I'm losing the freedom. I'm losing, and again, even if it's another child that you're adding to the mix, you're losing that one-on-one time with that child that you have. You're going to miss your random date nights or sleeping in on Sunday mornings or whatever it is. So, grief around that. And then you feel guilty about feeling grief around that and how to let that go. And that's where some mindset coaching and friends can really be helpful and really leaning into your community.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much of our self-worth is tied to our work, right? I've been working on this a lot personally, of feeling like, where you are in your career is what makes you worthy, or how much money you make is worthy, or, how much you contribute to your team is your self-worth. But that's not always true, right? And we put that on ourselves. And just because you're heading on maternity leave doesn't mean you're less worthy, doesn't mean you're going to be forgotten about. You might be, but is that what really matters? Like, does your teammates matter as much as your new baby you have? We thought our parents could help us with and support us when we go on maternity leave and have that, support system. And they might be older, they may not be as, they haven't done this in 30, 40 years, and so much has changed. And so the expectations we have on our team to pick up stuff when we're on leave or others to help us is hard, but it's when we need the help the most and we need it right away and the quickest and vet it, and all that. Thank you so much. All right. So what should parents really do in the months leading up to leave to ensure a smooth transition?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of emphasis on go, go, go. And I refer to that as like push energy. You're pushing towards a goal, you're pushing towards a timeline, a due date. And the best thing to do, honestly, is to do a pause. Pause, stop. I know it's like it's not ingrained in our culture to like stop when things are really chaotic or you're feeling a lot of emotion and energy building up. And, there's, this end in sight of like you're leaving, there's going to be this transition, this baby is coming, your family is growing, things are going to change. But to stop and take inventory, because that when you can stop and pause, and I take people through with group coaching and one-on-one values exercises. Where's your North Star? Because that can then guide every decision you make. Are you going to that birthday party? Or does that going to that birthday party means you'd have to reschedule your date night and your connection with your partner is more important? So you decline without an apology. Oh, have other plans. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. Happy birthday. So finding a list of your non-negotiables, taking inventory of what's important to you, especially in this next chapter, your values, what's important to you is probably going to shift from what it was 6 months or 12 months ago. And you know what? It's going to shift again. And that's okay. That's why it's important to stop and reevaluate who you are in the here and the now. And that will help you as you go into your leave, as you can make decisions about what's important to you. So that's like the first thing that I would say.
And what's realistic too, I think, is the other thing is sometimes we forget what's realistic of what you can do with a baby, right? For those who
A
haven't had
hundred
their babies yet.
100%. And you don't know, and you know what? I can tell you all three of my kids now and as babies, they were all different. The pregnancy, the
Mm,
delivery, the recovery, the child. So you may, if you've done this before, you may be thinking, oh, I've got it. My body bounced back. I was running after 2 weeks. My baby slept through the night at 2 weeks. Like you never know what you're going to get. And you can't do like a return to sender if it doesn't, go as planned. So being flexible and just I think embracing this mindset of grace with yourself and
hmm
flexibility, removing any rigidity and self-imposed structure. I think that's going to be really important as you enter this chapter and as it unfolds and just kind of imagine yourself as being like a leaf on a stream that's a babbling brook. Like just go with the flow. That's really going to help your mental health as well.
Absolutely. Like, just really quick for those who have not had their babies yet, um, and listening, you might have to say no to bachelorette parties for 3 days somewhere where you're flying and if you're pumping and like your friends may be upset, but it's going to be a choice you have to make, and there's going to be a time where your career might change. Like I switched roles when I actually, went on maternity leave. To your point with the values, my values changed. I didn't want to travel as much as I used to. I changed my working hours so that it was more flexible. Those are all the things people forget that they can really do while they're getting ready for maternity leave. And working with you, you help them realize all those different options on their own.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, there's a couple other things I could mention leading up to leave. So,
Yes.
I think journaling can be really powerful, and it's so wonderful years later to go back and read about your mindset and just kind of where you were in this time and space later on. But really finding out, I have something called the 4 pillars. And so figuring out what kind of recharges you, gives you energy, brings you back to center, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And so actually creating lists of these pillars ahead of time. So if you're like, gosh, my body feels really sluggish, you can go to that list and say, I can do any one of these things to recharge and feel good in my body again. um, I think mentally too, like it could be going for a walk, even though that technically could be under physically, you could put it under both pillars, but finding and spending some time and going back to that list and just adding to it anytime you think of something that historically has recharged you. Write it down so that as you're leading up to your leave or even while you're on leave, like those lists are going to be invaluable. And practice start setting boundaries. Practice saying no. Even if you want to say yes to something, say no. Why? Because when you practice, it'll become easier and easier. And again, going back to your values, you need to make sure that you're okay with saying no, that it comes easily, as you're explaining to someone why. You don't need much of an explanation. And when you say no to one thing, it creates space to say yes to something else that does align with your values.
Absolutely. And I think it's such a great, important lesson to say no ahead of time because when you have a kid, you need to advocate for them. Like I have a special needs kid, right? And so much of speaking up and advocating and learning to say, like, no, he needs this support, or no, like, this is not okay. Like, he can't go to like bounce houses. Like, no, I'm not coming to that party when there's a bounce house because I know how it's going to end, right? So there's all these things you learn along the way of being able to say no and not people pleasing anymore. And especially going back to family too. Like they might try, with families, they might want you to fly see them in 2 weeks, or go to this person's, and you have to start saying, no, I'm not going to this person, a lot of times, which was for me a really hard lesson because I tried to make everyone else happy, when the baby's here and I didn't take care of myself or get taken care of. And that's so important as well. Um, Thanks for that reminder. That's really, really important. So how do you stay in touch with work while you're on maternity leave? I think that's a really hard one because I think there's some rules against it. How does that work?
Yeah, honestly, the best thing to do is to find a keep in touch buddy. So, this is someone who is going to be your point of contact for all the things that are work related that you want to know about. And they also need to understand what you don't want to know about and be flexible and not necessarily say this is the way it's going to be and change it. An example would be, so someone I was working with, she had a friend at work and she was like, I'm going to text you when the baby arrives. I'll send you the picture. You have my permission to send it out to the team. They could put it on Slack or Teams. And you're going to be my point person for that. Additionally, hey, would you mind letting me know if one of my clients has a really big win or there's a challenge there? Because what you don't want is when you do return to work, feel like you're drinking from a fire hose with a bunch of information, which if it was just like breadcrumb dropped for you during your leave, it wouldn't feel so overwhelming. So have a conversation with your keep in touch buddy around what are the things you want to know about, what are the things you don't want to hear about if it's the gossip, and then be flexible with it. So if you're like, yeah, I want to know the water cooler stuff, and then you're like, you know what, I'm like nursing and I'm healing and I actually don't want that drama in my life. It was fun before, but my values have changed and I don't actually want to participate in that or hear about that right now. This is a really precious time. Be okay and talk to your keep in touch buddy in advance and say, you know what, it might change, but as of today of this conversation, this is what I'm thinking. And then also communicate how you want to keep in touch. Is it text? Is it a phone call? Is it an email to your personal email address? And then also, I would say staying in touch with HR or your manager. I would put a calendar invite on the calendar for 1 month before you're supposed to go back to check in with everybody to make sure you're still planning to return when you originally put in that date. If it's a flexible date, again, still check in and just see how are things going and does that still feel like the right time to return.
That is such a good point. Like, I remember, I was going to say, there's the FMLA when you're going to return, right? But then there's listening to your body of when you're actually ready to return, right? Not, as you said earlier, not everyone's the same, not every pregnancy is the same. And so I thought, I had to return at a certain time because my FMLA was up, but I was not ready. My kid was not sleeping. I didn't even think about having a buddy that I could connect with. It's a really great idea to have that extra buddy, who you choose and delegate. And then at that 1 month mark, that's when you talk to your manager. You don't have to tell your manager when you're in the hospital having the baby. You could be just telling your friend when you're ready and they share. So, what is the best way to reintegrate to the workplace after leave? I think that could be one of our last questions.
Yeah, this is probably it's like a make or break moment for you and the company. Honestly, the best time to figure out what your return to work plan is before you actually leave. And then the 1 month prior, that's your check-in of like, this is what we planned on. Does this still feel right? Or do we need to go to like plan B? What's our
Mhm.
contingency around this? So hopefully you can at least conceptually understand the day to day of what your work might be like. If you can do some test runs, so like set up childcare for the baby, if you're doing bottles, pumping, whatever, and even if you're not going to the office yet because you haven't actually gone back, like go to a coffee shop, go get a manicure, pedicure with a friend, leave the house for several hours and just kind of build up your stamina and endurance for emotionally and physically being this far away from your child and start to sit with that, process it. And so when it is your reintegration time back, it's not such a shock to your system. And then you're going to build trust with yourself, you're going to build trust with caretakers for the child. Obviously, I think communicating with your network, your boss, your work family, so to speak, that's really important. Mental health is also something to just be aware of. And I don't think that when people are in a state of needing help, they're not necessarily going to raise their hand and say, I think I need some help, unfortunately. So I would say let your partner know if you have one, let your friends and family know, like, hey, please keep an eye on me. There's something called the PMAD screening. It's the perinatal mood and anxiety disorder screening. If you've had a child, it's what you fill out at your 6-week postpartum appointment with your doctor. So it's a scale, it's a rating. You get a score 1 to 10. If you're above a 10, you probably need some additional mental health support. And so I would say lean into that. If your employer has an EAP, utilize that. If you see a therapist, if you have some, a close network, sometimes it's helpful to have an external third party. That's why like coaches are great as well. But get as much support as you can. Even try setting up a meal train for yourself for your first couple weeks back at work.
Absolutely.
Think about, are you going to do your hair and your makeup the same? Maybe you don't have as much
Mm.
time in the morning. What's your wardrobe going to look like? Think about the things that are going to make your life easier and just try and give yourself some grace. It's a really challenging time, but you've got this. You'll get through it and get as much help as you can.
That is so beautiful. Yes, that is so true. I mean, the one secret that I remember a mom told me one time in the bathrooms at an office was just cut your hair. And the other thing is, I was going to say too, is like for going back to work, is like, is your baby sleeping, right? Like, do you need a sleep coach? I didn't have a sleeping baby. I could not function at work. I didn't know how to pump when I got to work. I didn't know how to get into the pump room when I even got to work, where it was, how to get in. So all that information, like you said, is so important ahead of time, right? And having the coach to tell you what to ask, and tell you what you need to do and help you, get to that sleep that you need to go back to work, and pumping schedules and all that is all so important for you. So thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely.
A huge thank you to Arianna Hillis for sharing your experience from Shoshanna's daughter, about how you can, these insights of navigating maternity leave. Your work is truly amazing and making such a difference to working parents everywhere, working with the companies to help them set parents up for maternity, paternity leave. For more personalized guidance, download the Miss Poppins app and take advantage of your surprise discount code, and to connect with Arianna and other expert parent coaches. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe to our Miss Poppins for more insightful webinars and expert conversations. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And thank you again to Arianna. Like, we're so grateful to have you join us and learn everything today.
Well, thanks for having me. Great to be
Of
here.
course.